Making a decision can be hard, and you want to make good decisions because those will ultimately lead you to a happier, more successful life. But sometimes there are so many variables that we can become paralyzed by indecision. You're trying to decide things based on uncertain outcomes. Your questions just seem to lead to more questions. Maybe I should look for a new job. What do I want to do with my life? Am I going to regret this? Maybe I should just live in a van. We could all use help making big decisions, especially when we're talking about big life decisions. Well, not to worry, because today we're going to get advice from one of the worst people in the history of philosophy. Well, he's not that bad. He advocates murder a lot. Yes, that's true, but only in certain situations. He was tortured for trying to assassinate a guy. He might have been innocent. The church banned his book. Today, we're getting decision-making advice from Niccolò Machiavelli. So Niccolò Machiavelli was a political theorist who lived in Florence from 1469 to 1527. He is best known as the author of The Prince, which is probably the most notorious advice book ever written. In The Prince, Machiavelli infamously argues that rulers or political leaders should abandon their morality in the interest of governing more effectively. So why listen to Machiavelli if he's giving such bad advice? Here's the thing, he might be giving us really good advice, in part by challenging our definitions of what's good and what's bad. After all, before we know what we want out of life, we ought to think about how we define success. So in the spirit of Machiavelli, I'm going to ask you to temporarily, but only temporarily, put your conscience on silent mode. And we'll come back to the morality problem in a minute because it's a substantial problem. Because the case I want to make is that Machiavelli gives you a framework or a blueprint for decision making that will help you navigate your life. Maybe I should have worn the other shirt. Is this better? See, there is something about Machiavelli that's really appealing. He consistently ignores irrelevant information, like whether something's right or wrong. He ignores distractions and encourages us to focus laser-like on desired outcomes. And when you're caught in indecision trying to figure out what to do with your life, maybe that's not such a bad thing. So here are 3 decision-making tips from Machiavelli. First, think in binaries. Machiavelli has this weird habit of saying things are either going to be one way or they're going to be the other way. Success is either because of fortune or because of virtue. Ruling is either going to be easy or it's going to be hard. And if there are challenges, they will either come now or they will come later. At first, this might seem a bit silly, even reductive, but it actually really clarifies things. Consider something like applying for college or university, and you worry about whether or not you're going to get in, whether you're going to have to move across the country. If they let you in, should you accept or not? Can you afford it? What are your parents going to think? Maybe you don't even want to get in. But stop for a second and think like Machiavelli. Either you'll get in or you won't. And if you get rejected, you'll either apply again or you'll move on. I actually find this strategy really helpful in my life when I'm overthinking or worrying about things. Maybe you've got to move to another city, but you've got a girlfriend. Well, you can either break up or you can date long distance. And if you try long distance, it'll either work out or it won't. This brings us to tip number 2, understand the things you can't control. Predictably, Machiavelli thought your life was defined by 2 factors: virtue and fortune. Now, virtue for Machiavelli is different from ancient virtue, and it's different from Christian virtue. It's really something more like your capacity for success, your abilities, your talents, your skills. Being virtuous is just being excellent at achieving your goals. So this is about skills and habits that are under your control. You can develop these to give yourself the best chance of success. You can study hard, you can train, you can learn new skills, you can make yourself more virtuous. But then there's fortune, and fortune is a Fortune is all the things you can't control. You can't control weather, you can't control illness, to a large extent, you can't control other people. What you ought to do is plan to mitigate the effects of randomness on your life. So generally, when making plans for the future, you want to limit as much as possible the effects of random chance. For Machiavelli, you don't want to make your decisions dependent on what other people do. For him, hope is not a strategy. Worry is not a strategy either, by the way. Tip number 3, don't delay a decision. Machiavelli was a big fan of ancient Rome. He really liked Rome, in part because he believed the Romans were proactive. Thus, the Romans, seeing inconveniences from afar, always found remedies for them and never allowed them to continue so as to escape a war, because they knew that war may not be avoided, but is deferred to the advantage of others. Basically, this means that putting off or avoiding difficult decisions will often put you in a worse position later. So if you can foresee a problem developing, you should probably just deal with it now rather than later. Now, this can be a problem for me, maybe for you too, because I'm kind of an overthinker. I like to think about things from every angle. Maybe the other shirt was better. But admit it, sometimes you think about things too much. In some cases, delaying a decision can make you more subject to fortune. Like if you're just waiting for some other person to make a decision just so you don't have to, you're giving your agency up to that other person. Of course, you want to gather information, consult trusted advisors, but often delaying a decision will affect you negatively. This is especially true if you can see a problem far off on the horizon but fail to address it until it's right in front of your face. Now, Machiavelli was a guy who was fixated on power, and this is what makes his advice morally and ethically dubious, because he often advises his audience to be merciless with their rivals, to trust no one. He might obsess to the point of paranoia about traitors and enemies, but I do think we can adapt his thinking even if we ourselves aren't wannabe tyrants. We all want to succeed, just not at any cost. So when making big decisions, you want to factor in the well-being of others, people you care about, your core values, the law, and, go a little easy on conspiring to eliminate your rivals. But I maintain that Machiavelli isn't all bad, and if you want a more nuanced, detailed account of his thought, a deeper dive into Machiavellian philosophy, check out this video over here. I'll see you there. Talk to you soon.